Not a lot of people actually know that Hopper was founded and is headquartered in Montreal, so we're proudly Canadian. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Hopper and the nature of like our mobile company and how it kind of impacted how we are acquiring user and how we actually automated this whole process. And I'll try to be a little like actionable and not to be too high level. So try to think about your job and how these situations would apply. That's what I do at conferences. I look at a slide and I think like, how can I take something out of this to my company? And by the way, who had heard about Hopper in this room before coming here? Still not 100%. And who is in gaming and non-gaming? The rest? Cool. Good mix. So the Hopper, what's Hopper? How do we describe it today? Hopper is the best way to book travel on your phone. So it's a flights and hotels booking app. It's just basically a marketplace where every marketplace is the same. What's really important? Price, convenience, and selection. So you need to have the best prices. You have to have the most convenient way to shop and book. And you have to have all the products, all the inventory, which is what made Amazon and Booking.com successful. This is basically what's at the core of Hopper. And we've really focused on convenience to do this marketplace on mobile by using a lot of data to predict future flight prices. There's a lot of anxiety around flight shopping. People will open a bunch of tabs, go incognito. They're kind of have these conspiracy theories about flight prices. And so we kind of pinpointed that anxiety. And with historical flight prices, billions and billions of flight prices coming in, our own data center, really strong senior data scientists, we were able to develop an algorithm that takes in the prices. And when a user does a search, we're able to tell that user, hey, the price you're looking at is going to go up. You should buy now. Or the price you're looking at is going to go down. And we can tell you that with 95% accuracy. So you should watch this flight. And so it's really weird to think about that. Actually, we tell 75% of our new users not to buy what we're selling, which is kind of nonsensical for an e-commerce. But that allows us to build that long-term trust that we're looking for. In terms of scale, we sell over $3 million a day in transaction in flights and hotels. And in terms of pace, if you want to compare to your apps, we get about 1 million installs per month, mostly organic. It's about like 65-35% organic paid mix. And in travel, that's actually a lot. So yeah, Hopper is a data-driven conversation. Our users plan very early, on average 4 months in advance for their trip. And they actually listen to what we're saying to them, right? So over 90% of our sales come from these price alerts. And we don't, something that's kind of a counterintuitive when we talk to customers, and we do a lot, we are really obsessed about our customers and users and try to talk to them, is that they tell us that they don't receive enough push notifications, which usually it's the opposite. But if they start watching a flight and we don't start talking to them, then they think the product is broken. Their anxiety goes back up because they're not sure that we're tracking the right things. So we're actually sending, on average, 40 notifications per flight search or per flights watch. And it's not necessarily about buying now, but also like alternative recommendations or just general information about price going up or down. And what we found is that really long advanced search and these many, many touch points allow us to actually do a smart kind of travel recommendations. And now we see that over 20% of what we're selling is flights that people didn't initially ask for. Similar to Netflix, people also watch kind of type recommendations, or YouTube that has 70% of videos that are consumed that were not initially searched. But if you're trying to go to Italy for 2 weeks in the summer, and you're like, OK, I'll probably fly to Rome, but we find a great deal 2 days earlier in Florence, then we are able to send you that notification. And the conversion rate is actually really, really strong because we find great deals to usually recommend to not necessarily just an alternative destination. And so online travel is very, very competitive. It's been an industry that's been online for a long time, when's the last time you actually booked a flight offline via a travel agent or at the airport? So it's a kind of an old online industry. And it's huge. Like Google and Expedia, they both spend over $5 billion in marketing a year. So it's very, very marketing intensive. And there's a lot of like acquisition, mergers, and there's a lot of frenemies with Google going into Google Flights and Google Hotels, but at the same time, Booking is like one of their top clients. So it's very competitive. And it's really hard to enter into that space. And what happens is that most companies ended up focusing on search. So 80% of Google and Expedia's $5 billion yearly budget goes directly to Google. And what happens if you do that, if you focus on low funnel, very high intent users, they're really expensive. Google's gonna price those as much as you're ready to pay for them. And you have to, you're trying to convert those users right away because you just pay like $3 for a click. You don't know when that user is gonna come back. Maybe you're gonna pay again when they come back because they'll search again in Google. And so that kind of misaligned the company's incentive, the product incentive, and the user incentive. Because now the companies try, they want you to book really, really bad, and so they use these hate selling tactics, or they try to actually increase the anxiety around the shopping to have you book right away with all these kind of Christmas tree strategies on their website. And it's a cheesy quote that you can put on a mug, but the thinking was if you can't beat two competitors that have a $100 billion market cap, you can't beat them on their playing field, right? So you have to change the battlefield, and you have to change just the whole paradigm. And that's what Hopper did by focusing on retention. So we were able to focus on retention for a bunch of reasons, and it was not always intended, but just also some luck when you launch a company. But we decided to go app only and to build the best mobile products in travel, the best mobile app with great design, with like a superior user experience. We focused on data to actually build that long-term relationship, getting to know our users, to be good at recommendations. The notifications are just great for retention. The app sits on your phone, and we're able to re-engage you every other week or every other day when you're actively searching. And if you are going to focus on retention, you have to be on the user side. And you have to be customer obsessed, and you have to put your money where your mouth is. Like what happened recently with WoW Air, that they just canceled all their flights, and Hopper was the only online travel agency to actually reimburse our customers. Didn't have a great ROI, but it was a great opportunity for us to position ourselves as the only big travel company to be really on the user side. So what happens when you focus on retention is that you just change your marketing equation. It's not direct return on ad spend anymore. It's more about how many purchases can I get out of a user, kind of the subscription or the SaaS model or the gaming model. And so you start talking about LTV, customer acquisition cost, and then you end up doing social advertising. Because we have that great retention, we actually don't have to wait until someone is searching for a flight to acquire them. We can acquire them a few months earlier than that, and then just keep them engaged until they kind of buy their flight. So old universe, old model, tired, web, search, conversion. Hopper is the new model, or that's what we're trying to think. Mobile, social, and retention. And you see that shift happening in other industries, and that's why I think mobile products feel so good. Like Uber or Instagram or Spotify, all these mobile companies have their incentives, their design incentive aligned with the users because they want to keep the users happy, which is not necessarily the case for an e-commerce where you go shop once a year. And also that allows us to actually spend 1,000 times less in marketing than our competitors. We like to say that every 6 hours, Booking Expedia spend our entire annual marketing budget, but we have more app downloads than they do. Obviously, that's a screenshot of the month where we had more installs, but it's kind of crazy to think that they have $5 billion in marketing every year, but we get more app downloads than them in North America. And we know that the industry is shifting to mobile, and that over 90% of the time spent on mobile is in-app. So if you just put these trends together, that's what makes Hopper a really, really exciting and interesting business, although our scale is still pretty small compared to these giants. So then I got there kind of at that point where we were starting to do Facebook ads, and we started to do a lot of tests, and realized that actually showing flight deals on social media had the best performance for campaigns. And that's just generally true. It's a very simple thing. And that's why I love to use that example. But the McDonald's app is constantly in the top 10 most downloaded or top 20 most downloaded because you get free fries with your burger or a $2 discount. And so deals and discounts, and Google found that in a survey, a survey that it's a really strong motivating factor to download an app. And the problem with advertising flight deals was that you have thousands of origin and destinations. You can't just say flights to Latin America are this price, like I need to know your origin airport. The prices change all the time. You have to really target around home airports. And then there's a bunch of creative sizes that are different. There's a bunch of languages if you're in international business currency. So it just keeps multiplying the complexity of your setup. And then as soon as you put out your ads, they're immediately stale because the price changed. And so that's where the need came from to automate our campaigns, because we couldn't just do that manually. And then the question is like, where do you even start with this? And that's a question I get a lot, because I go on stage and I say, we automate everything, and you always show the end product, but how do you actually start to do that as a marketer? And as a marketer, you usually start with spreadsheets, because you can't code, you don't know how to write scripts, but you're really excited about your spreadsheets if you're like me. And so you just start creating like lists of spreadsheets, and all the Facebook and the Google, they have like these Power Editor where you can upload your CSVs. So I would ask like a dev to fetch some flight deals that we found for users, created a list, uploaded the CSV to Facebook, and would do that every day, right? So not super automated, but then you start to get the structure and the idea of how you're going to automate later. Then hired my buddy Damien, and he's more kind of a growth hacker personality, a more technical marketer. And he was like, Simon, you can't just do this every day. Like, do something else with your life. And he just wrote a little script to fetch the deals, put them in a spreadsheet, download it as a CSV, create like a Gmail kind of integration, send it directly to the Facebook or the AdWords or the Snapchat kind of backend. And you start to do a collection of these small scripts. I'm like, I don't want to go every day in Facebook, take my spend, put it in a spreadsheet. Can you do a script that connects to the Facebook API, takes my spend, split it per country, put it in the spreadsheet, and then I can report it every month to the leadership team. And start to have like a collection of these small scripts that are actually very simple. It's not rocket science. It's basic programming. And then eventually, as it grows and you start breaking things, and the engineers are like, what are you doing? You can't just mess with our database or the prices, or if you get your app or your product down, that's when you need an actual ads engineer. And so we kind of push them to detach an engineer from the engineering team to help us to put all these scripts together. And that's what I get completely lost, and my only role now is to come at conferences and talk about it. But you have then the engineer coming in, putting your scripts together, making sure they're robust, making sure nothing's going to break. It will get your growth hackers or your technical team really excited, because that's what they're excited about. And so that's what the Hopper Ads Engine is. It's basically a collection of scripts that automates our user acquisition operation. But mostly it's just branding for ads engineering work. And branding is kind of important, actually, because it helps you, create like a narrative, motivate your team around objectives. It helps you communicate with your leadership team, with your investors, by putting a name on it and kind of, putting principles around it. But so this is what the marketers see. So, we are looking for flight deals all the time for people who watch flights. So we are finding those. And what we are doing, we are calling our deals API that we created, and we're like, okay, give me deals from the US and Canada to Hawaii and Europe. Get a list of deals, and they're automatically deployed to Facebook, Snapchat, Pinterest and Twitter using their ads API. And once you have one of those connections, then it's pretty easy for an engineer to actually deploy it to the other API. And this is what the users see, right? It's geo-targeted deal. The creative is customized. You have small variations. We found that on Snapchat, you had to be very minimalistic. On Pinterest, showing multiple deals was working better. And so this is what's really important. I tried to, when it started to grow too big, I started to split in different pillars. So we have the deals engine, which is what manages your product catalog. Make sure the prices is right, make sure the inventory is always up to date, make sure you have the best pictures, so it's all about your own data. Then you have what I call the buying engine. It's what generates the creatives automatically, what's connecting to the API to create the campaigns, to create the ad sets, the campaign structure. And then you have another important part, that's the reporting engine, which also every 24 hours will get your cost data, will get your performance data, and log it into your database for your data science or BI team to kind of, and yourself obviously play with. And the other interesting part was the optimization engine. So what we wanted to do is like, okay, how can we know which deals are gonna perform better? Maybe we can look at early performance after 100 impressions and start moving the budgets really aggressively to the best performing deals. But what happens is the trend in industry in the last couple of years, and we've just heard it from Facebook, is that they do a lot of that stuff automatically now, and they do it very well with campaign budget optimization. Usually it takes a few iterations of a new feature like that to be really effective, but eventually it's going to be more effective than your in-house setup. So it's important to build things, but it's also important to be able to say, okay, now Google has something that does it better, Facebook does it better, so you actually drop your work, or you just avoid to do it. And so then, when I talk to my leadership team, they're like, okay, but why do we actually need this ads engine? Like, what's the main reason? Well, kind of a recap, ads performance. If you have very granular ads, you're gonna have just better engagement rates with your ads, which is the bottom line of every good performing social ads is strong engagement with your ads. Scalability, for us, it was impossible to do manually, and now we can just expand and pause campaigns really quickly. We can actually scale 10x our spend. Like we spend somewhere between $500K to $2 million a month on social media every month. But we built this to be able to spend $10, $20 million a month without having to scale the team. That was also the idea building for the future. Flexibility is actually important. We live in this duopoly world where Facebook and Google have all the power. But as soon as you add these other channels, Snapchat, Pinterest, Twitter, then you start to have negotiating power with these platforms. And you can go to them and, Snapchat is giving us a lot of incentives to use their platform and to try new features. They give us access to betas and alphas, or will give us like spend credit to spend in January. And then Facebook calls you and is like, why did your budget decrease by 15%? And then you start also playing this game where you try to get the most out of every platform because you're really flexible. You're not dependent on just one platform. And then what's really, really important is not really the ads engine itself and like the final product or project. It's more just the culture that it will create in your team, culture of performance, of scalability, of automation, and of not doing repetitive things over that kind of kills your creativity. So it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And so I talk all the time about this vision that I have, that our ads engine should be a big red physical button that we press in the morning. The deals are fetched, ads are created on all the platforms, performance is logged, and we can just go on with our day and do other stuff. So we already have the user interface. My team actually bought me a big red button that I have on my desk. They haven't told me if it's plugged in or not, so I have to press it, I don't know. But just having it there, and it's just like creating this kind of team culture. So the best lever in our ads engine used to be optimization, like I touched a little bit about. And we used to see huge differences based on what destinations we would advertise, if the price was low or high, if the discount was good or not that good. And so we did put a lot of effort in like curating the set of products that we would advertise. But eventually now Facebook just does it all, right? And the new best lever that you have if you start doing like kind of similar ads engine is creative. And that's kind of the last thing that they can't optimize, that their machine learning won't be able to beat humans at for a long time. And so we work with a company called Smartly that allows us to do this dynamic creative. And so you start with dynamic static ads, like I want my price here, my destination here, my product photo. And now you can actually do dynamic video ads. And my creative team is really amazing, and they do this super out-of-the-box thing, like this kind of price roulette works really, really well, like catches the attention of the users. And all of this like is dynamic. You just generate thousands of videos like that in one click. On the last one on the right, we tried to kind of mimic the app to see if we would get like a higher post-install engagement, so you can run all that kind of tests. And yeah, dynamic ads are coming everywhere. So we have our own setup, but Facebook has dynamic ads directly integrated with your product catalog. So for Facebook, we actually stopped doing the buying engine portion. We just connect our catalog to Facebook, and they do it. And it's coming on Pinterest. They start to having these shopping catalogs. It's coming on Snapchat, and it's going to come everywhere. And so in the future, there will be less importance on the ads creation part, like connecting to the API and say, create campaign, create that set. All that's going to be kind of managed by the social media directly. Optimization, like I said, is going to be less important. Just throw the maximum amount of data and products at Facebook, at Pinterest, and they will find out which ones work better. And what's going to be really more important in the future is going to be creative. So make sure to staff up your creative team, have people who can think in templates, who can work in a very fragmented creative world where people now need to do animation, videos, static and story format, and 6 seconds video with that still gives out your message. So the creative job is becoming more complex. And obviously, your feed management, how your data flows. And I like to say that marketers of the future are more like plumbers that have to just plug in things together and make sure the water flows in the right direction. If you want to be a little fancier, you're going to say architects of your data, but really it's just like connecting your apps flyers things with the Facebook things and make sure that Snapchat gets the right data from it, etc. But also, sometimes the implementations aren't great. Facebook and all these other platforms try to market how good their implementations are, but usually it takes like 6 months, a year before they actually catch up with what we were doing. Or when they say something is coming out in Q3, it's going to be Q1 sometimes with some of them. So, and also for us, not everything was travel specific. So usually they will start with e-commerce, and then they will go to hotels, and then they will go to flights eventually. So you still have like another 6 months or a year before they reach you. And so that's still like time for you to have your in-house setup. And like even Facebook today with their dynamic ads, they're great. Like for us, they work really well. But we still need our setup because you can't do dynamic ads on stories. It's been in the making for a long time. You can't do dynamic ads with video creatives. It's only static creatives. So they still like some of these features. So I'm going to wrap up. Tips to get started if you want to build your own ads engine. And to be honest, I've seen some companies starting to do that and starting to adopt that vocabulary, and I think it's great. So find your ideal vision. Like if you have a big red button for your marketing operation, what does it do when you press it? If you're like a genie and you have like you can make a wish, like what does that button do? And so you start by thinking about that and break it into small steps. Something I like to say to my team is overpromise, underdeliver. Try to think, which is the opposite. Usually it's the underpromise, overdeliver. But if you didn't think of the craziest thing you could do, I'm going to be a little disappointed. Like you actually overdid what your objective. Like maybe your objective wasn't crazy enough. So I try to say like, Try to make it perfect, and you will land somewhere that's going to be actually maybe better than if you didn't try to do that crazy thing. Don't hire too many marketers. We all saw what happened at Uber. I think that trend is going to keep up in the industry. Marketing teams are going to just be smaller and smaller. But you still need like engineers and creatives and analysts. So marketing teams are becoming more diverse and have different roles in them. And the marketer has more kind of a PM role. Keep your team small intentionally. That will allow you to be super flexible. Don't put too much meetings with your reps on your calendar. My calendar is like very clear, and that just gives us more time to try a bunch of fun ideas that we have, to have more time to be creative. And then adopt new technology and new products along the road. Don't feel like you have to hold on to your setup. And if you have the opportunity to talk to Facebook and Google, try to understand the direction they're taking. So if I know like Facebook is building dynamic video ads in the next 3 months, I'm not going to build my own setup to do it. And then 3 months later, I'm like, oh shit, like we wasted 3 months time of work. But yeah, in the end, it's going to be more about the culture that you're going to create, the trust that you're going to create around your team from the rest of the company, from the engineering team. Like we're probably one of the few companies where the engineering team is really excited about what we're doing and is like suggesting ideas for us and actually help us really, really well. And the best thing you're going to see with your ads engine is the time saved to do other things, right? So my team now, after doing user acquisition for a couple of years only, we started to take on retention because we realized, okay, the best way for us now to be good at marketing is to have a higher revenue per install, which means either increasing conversion rate or increasing retention. So we started to work on retention. I put this Fortnite image because we also start thinking about how to be creative with monetization. If we sell over $1 billion of flights every year, but our revenue isn't close to being that great. So we need to start being creative. And if a company can sell virtual dance moves, billions of them, billions of dollars of it, I think we can come up with ideas to monetize better our app. And then just have more time to sleep, to do nothing. Which, if you're marketers, if you need constantly new ideas, it's important to have just a not super busy schedule of having to go in every account, optimize your campaign, your ad set, report your budget, meetings, calls, etc. If you have just more time to be creative, that will end up with great ideas. So thank you so much. I went a little over, but if we have the time for questions, I'd be happy to take them. Yeah.
Hold this.
Have you ever been called the Steve Jobs of mobile ad automation?
Not yet, no, but I'm not sure the right example for me, but I'm rather nice to my team.
He's more the Bill Gates.
Yeah.
Excellent talk, Simon. And you kind of touched on the stuff that I mentioned, war of efficiencies. And it's not about creating more creatives, but tweaking and getting the most out of the creatives. And also, now, probably before you were doing a lot external, but now you have teams in-house that are creating and churning out. And something that we have also done, and depending on where you are in the life cycle, it's sometimes more efficient.
Yeah. Creative is my favorite things to do now. I don't really care about the technical setup. That's not what excites me. What excites me is talking to my users. My favorite tool as a marketer is Typeform. It's this beautiful, very slick, questionnaire kind of thing. And we have a tool where I can send notifications to any subset of users. About 10% of them will give me feedback. So I'm like, why did you download Hopper? Oh, I talked about it with a friend. How did that came up in the conversation? What was the conversation? And then trying to feed those insights into the creatives that we built. That's what's really exciting for me.
One quick question is, so is the distribution of budget, which changes based on all the things that are going in the industry on sometimes a regular daily basis, weekly, monthly, is that fully automated, or are there people manually doing it, distributing what should go to Facebook, Google?
So the way we work, and we recently switched, that was an interesting thing. We usually had a fixed budget based on a run rate, cash flow as a VC-funded company, and we switched to net payback period targets. right? So we're like, what's the average revenue per user in 12 months? And for a Hopper, it could be like 50 cents, 60 cents, a dollar. And then we spend as much as we can within that limit, that average revenue per install. So it becomes kind of a target CPI, which is kind of weird because it's not really the target CPI. But then we just decide to shift the budget to the channels that allow us to reach that goal. But we have also like a minimum floor that we want to spend in every channel to make sure that we keep the conversation going, that we keep the learnings coming in. And we treat, like, for example, now we started to have hotels where the cost per install is much higher. So how do we start shifting to hotels and then like our CPI is going to suck? So we just have like this floor where we say, okay, we're going to spend at least like 30K per new product line that we're going to have at Hopper. And then eventually that will increase the revenue per install because hotel users are more valuable. So we just, we distribute based on like our kind of 12-month payback period objective.
But manually right now.
But manually, yes,
okay.
yes.
But one day.
Yeah, eventually. But you know, sometimes it's like, how much time does it actually take to go into Snapchat? Like we have a little script that's like increase all bids by 10%. You click on that, the volume goes up. And then eventually, you could go crazy and automate that. But one lesson that we had, that we had, was that you don't have to go all the way. Like you don't have to put the crazy amount of work and effort to do the last 10% of automation because that's not efficient.
I have actually two questions in one. One is the follow-up to what you just mentioned in the previous answer when you mentioned your creative team using the results from, let's say, Typeform, and then you pass on those insights. Do you have any way to, what do you do to make sense of them and to keep those results organized, to transition that qual into,
really
what to
hard,
prioritize, what not to prioritize? And then the second question feeds off of that is, I don't think you spoke about your content team. So for retention, how much efforts are you putting into content, and how are you going about it? Thanks.
Cool. So for creatives, it's really hard because I collect like 900 feedback, and they're all, you can't really just categorize them automatically. So what I do, because I have a lot of time now, is just I'll take half a day and I will categorize each sentence or each feedback that I got into, like, I start to find like categories. Okay, these people talk about price, these people talk about something else, and try to put that together. And I write a one-pager doc for my team, and I say, these were the parameters of the research. These are the 5 takeaways, because people won't read further. And then you write a little page about it. So I do some of the interpretation myself, which I find myself sometimes doing like a more sociological, psychological interpretation, where I'm not necessarily trained to do that or the best at that. So I think we'd be better off as marketers if we did some of that training or being better at being like researchers. And then your second question was about content creation. So for Hopper, we're lucky that the retention is really built in the core product, because you watch a flight and the content that we send you is just about the price change. So we don't have like a content team. Actually, we don't write content. We do PR. We do a data-driven PR where we analyze flights fluctuation or the top 10 destinations to watch. But we haven't fed. We do that for journalists and for PR mention, but we haven't fed that back to our users yet. But maybe we should do that if someone doesn't watch a flight. But it's weird because it's dangerous. We enter a really dangerous territory when we start pushing content through notification that people didn't ask for, because then they can turn off notifications and they won't get the price notifications. And so my team started to do retention notifications recently, and really quickly, it's just like I was happily featured on Reddit asshole design with like one of my fake price alerts that was used to engage users who had never searched. And then you're like, oh, yeah, that's dangerous. If you start giving retention to the marketing team, you can quickly go out of hand and just get like 1 email per day from Expedia. Like we all know how it ends up.